All right, welcome back. This is going to be our last lesson of this week. We're going to wrap up the Crucible next week. We're doing 3 lessons a week. I felt that 5 was maybe a little too much for you, so we're going to cut down to 3 lessons a week. And this is the last one. So, we're going to be talking today about insanity and the difference, the notion of justice and guilt, the notion of justice and guilt, and how they've evolved in the United States from back then to now. How the system does it take advantage of certain marginalized individuals? Is insanity a valid defense? Before we get to that, let's talk about where we stand in the play. So we finished Act 3. And we know what happened. John came in. First of all, John had a choice. John had a choice. John's choice was, do I take my wife home because they said she's pregnant and they want to execute her? And Danforth tells him 9 months is long. He basically says, look, we're probably going to let her go, and you can get out of here. It's over with. Just go. He's basically trying to buy him off. And Proctor's like, if I do that, then I leave all my friends and everyone else to suffer and to die. This is one of 3 major decisions Proctor makes. This is actually the second one. The first one happened before the play started. His decision was to have sex with Abigail. I mean, honestly, to have an affair with Abigail was what started everything rolling, pretty much. Her obsession and this promise that he made to her in that way, and she took it. She went off with it. She was young and taken with him, and sparked all this in motion, and that's why he felt so guilty. So this is his second decision he has to make. If I leave now, my wife can be free and everything can go back and we can be happy again. He told Danforth that's all he wanted. But when he gets there to it, and Danforth says, you leave all this and you leave us be, and we're doing what we're doing, we get your wife out of here and it's gone. Proctor won't do it. So they go in. Abigail puts on a big show, falling to fainting, somebody sending their spirit out, etc. She cracks Mary Warren. Danforth starts to believe Proctor a little bit. He says, you bring Elizabeth in here and we'll see what happens. She ends up lying, and that's it. He thinks that Proctor is a wizard. You are combined with Antichrist, he says. Puts him in jail. And they start hanging all these people. It's just rough. If you've seen the scene in the movie, it's just rough. They just start hanging everybody. Reverend Hale also goes through a major transformation. Reverend Hale completes his 180 arc. He came in thinking he was all about this. And yes, Lucifer's in Salem and we're going to root him out, to knowing that Abigail and the girls were false. And he quit. So let's talk about insanity. Let's talk about guilt and the notion of right and wrong and how you stand. Basically, when they came in, they were guilty until proven innocent. There basically was no way to prove your innocence other than to confess to them. It's a crazy time period, crazy set of circumstances. So let's do our reading here, our informational text. Defense case written by Nina Totenberg from 2006. Transcript from a 2006 NPR interview investigates the insanity defense, a legal defense to protect people who have severe mental illness that may prevent them from knowing right from wrong when committing crimes. At the time of the reporting, the insanity defense was up for legal review in the case of Eric Clark, a schizophrenic man who shot an officer. Once the trial was over, the Supreme Court decided to uphold the prosecution's claim that Clark knew right from wrong, so regardless of his sanity, he did not qualify under Arizona's insanity defense. Clark was convicted of murder and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Basically, somebody says, they plead insanity. It's extremely difficult to win an insanity defense. Because yes, you may have all kinds of issues, and you may be schizophrenic, you may be manic depressive, obsessive compulsive, anything like that. It's a matter of, do you know right from wrong? Do you know right from wrong? That's the basis of insanity, and it's tough. So this goes and it talks about Clark, and it talks about everything like that. This is a transcript. It's almost like in play form. All right, so let's go down here and let's answer our questions. All right, let's see down here. All right, number 1. Which of the 2 following best identify the central ideas of this text? So we're doing 2 of them. B, justice and fair trial, and D, mental illness and its relationship to crime. I don't know the statistic, but I know mental illness is very big part of, there are lots of, I don't know the statistics, so I'm not just, but basically a lot of incarcerated individuals have diagnosed mental illnesses. Number 2, what 2 phrases support the answers? C, if he thought he was killing an alien, is that really understanding right from wrong? And E, does the Constitution's guarantee of due process of law require a state to consider mental illness? Number 3, what does the phrase diminished capacity mean? This is how they ask you vocab. The answer is C, mental instability or delusion. Excuse me. And number 4, which phrase from the text best supports the answer to part A? The answer is B, he thought that he was killing an alien. Number 5, explain what the prosecution and defense agree on and where the tension between them emerges. What might the results of this case mean that some of the nation's most restrictive laws could be in jeopardy? All right, basically, there was an issue there of right and wrong and what's insane and what's not insane. And just because he thought he was killing an alien, well, does that mean that he was doing it wrong? Should he not have done it? And some of the nation's most restrictive laws can be in jeopardy. This goes about, the Supreme Court pretty much decides everything in the land. Everybody thinks it's the president, Congress. So the Supreme Court rules. If the Supreme Court says something, it doesn't matter what's been said before. It's the supreme law of the land. It's no different than gay marriage. Lots of states were saying, banning gay marriage, whatever. And then the Supreme Court came out and said, nope, it's illegal. And that's the way it is. That the Supreme Court has ultimate power over anything that's brought before it. You have to bring it before the Supreme Court. It has to go all the way up, and it can take years to get there. But once it's there, whatever they rule, that's it. All right, let's go down here to these answers. Based on this article, do you think people should be able to use the insanity defense in the court? That's up to you. Number 2, in the context of this article, what is fair? Do you agree with the defense or with the prosecution? Who gets to decide what counts as a defense in court, and how should it be decided? Again, these are questions for you to answer. All right, let's go back. Yeah, you can see insanity is very difficult. You could do a little more research into that defense and how difficult it is to prove, and just the statistics of who's pled it and who've been successful in that defense. Please finish the play by the time we come back. We're going to review everything again before we start back. We've got a few more common lists to do. I think we've got 3. Invictus is one of them. So we may or may not do that. If you remember Invictus from Scarlet Letter. Invictus from the Scarlet Letter. We may or may not go back over that since how we've already done it. So please read Act 4, the final act. We've already talked about the 2 decisions that Proctor has made and how they influence everything. Well, he makes one more in the end. And it's very powerful, very, very powerful, especially when you consider it to be a true story. Whether or not these actual things happen, of course, is dramatization, but still powerful nonetheless. So, till I'll see you again. Great day to be a warrior.